Hello everyone, Other Helmet Guy here. Today we're diving into Assassin's Creed Resynced, but before we get into it, if you enjoy this kind of content and want to support the channel, don't forget to follow, like, and subscribe. Now, let's get into it. So this is a complete remake of the original, and having played Assassin's Creed Black Flag, I can actually speak to the differences between the two versions. The big question is, does it improve on what made the original great? Or have they taken out things that worked really well and replaced them with stuff that just doesn't hit the same way? Let's break it down in more detail. From what I've seen in the trailers, the visuals have had a serious upgrade. The environments are brighter, more detailed, and just look stunning compared to the original. They've also added some fun little mechanics, like being able to interact with animals, cats, turtles, dogs. You can pet and feed them, which is a nice touch. Parkour has also been improved, with smoother flow when climbing and jumping between buildings, and overall movement just feels more fluid. Now, none of this is too surprising. When you're remaking a game over a decade later, better graphics and improved mechanics kind of come with the territory. But the real question is whether it goes beyond just looking prettier and actually delivers something meaningfully different. Now let's talk about the ship mechanics, and honestly, this is where I start to have some real issues. Yes, they've added animal companions like a cat or monkey on the jackdaw, which gives a small morale boost to your crew. Fine, and the new officer system where you find characters in the world, do their quests and recruit them with unique perks. That's actually a solid addition, I'll give them that. The weapons also have a secondary firing mode now, which adds a bit more variety in combat. But let's be real, is that enough for a full remake? Because here's what's bothering me. In Assassin's Creed Rogue, a game that came out the same year as the original Black Flag, they already introduced reverse boarding, where enemies could actually storm your ship and attack your crew, and you had to fight them off to survive. That was intense, that was fun, that made naval combat feel genuinely dangerous. If Resynced hasn't brought that back in 2026, that is just embarrassing. And I have seen it mentioned somewhere, why is Edward glued to the wheel the entire time you're sailing? You've got a full crew on deck, officers with unique abilities, and yet there's no option to hand the wheel over to a crewmate and let the ship sail on autopilot while you actually move around the deck. Imagine walking around, talking to your crew, playing some dice, feeling like an actual captain in charge of his ship. That would make the jackdaw feel truly alive. Instead, you're just standing at the wheel. Again, and then there's the captain's cabin, and this one really gets me. In the original, the cabin was your hub for everything, upgrading your ship, restocking weapons, managing cargo, customizing Edward. It was all right there in one place. In Resynced, they've actually stripped those functions out and moved them to the harbormaster at ports. So your own cabin now has less to do in it than it did 13 years ago. That is not a remake, that is a step backwards. What about bringing crew members with you onto islands to help hunt for treasure, or assist with raids and plundering? Right now it still feels like Edward doing everything alone. If a remake is going to go bigger, that is the kind of depth I want to see, not just prettier visuals. Now let's get into combat, and honestly this is where things get a bit concerning for me as a fan of the original. Let's start with the big one, the hidden blade. In the original Black Flag, you could equip the hidden blade as its own weapon in open combat, with some of the most satisfying finisher animations in the whole game. In Resynced, that's gone. The hidden blade is now only used as a contextual finisher after you break an enemy's defense. Your main weapons are now your dual swords, and that's pretty much it. And I also have to ask, have they kept in the ability to fight unarmed and disarm enemies? Because in the original you could go into a fight with bare fists, counter an enemy, rip their weapon right out of their hands and use it against them. That was brilliant, that was fun. If that's been taken out as well, that is another piece of what made the original so enjoyable just gone. Now the new combat is clearly influenced by modern games. Think the parry and dodge system inspired by the likes of Dark Souls, where you can't just spam the same counter move over and over to win. Enemies react differently depending on how you fight, and you actually have to think about what you're doing. I get what they were going for, they didn't want the original's combat to feel too easy or repetitive. But here's my honest opinion, the original Black Flag was never meant to be a challenge. It was a power fantasy. It was about feeling like an unstoppable pirate assassin, experimenting with different ways to fight, being creative, having fun. Taking that away and replacing it with a more demanding Souls-influenced system changes the whole feel of the game. Whether that's a good or bad thing really depends on the player, but for me personally, I want to enjoy the experience, not feel like I'm fighting the combat system every step of the way. Now on the stealth side, there are actually a couple of things worth mentioning. First, you can now crouch freely at any time, which sounds simple but makes a huge difference. In the original you couldn't crouch during tailing missions, which made them feel really clunky and awkward. That's finally been fixed, and speaking of tailing missions, they've changed how getting spotted works. In the original, being detected during a tailing mission meant instant desync, mission failed, back to the checkpoint. Frustrating doesn't even cover it. In Resynced, if you get spotted the mission doesn't automatically end, enemies react to you and the situation plays out, giving you a chance to recover. Now on one hand, great, it's less annoying and less punishing. But on the other hand, it does remove some of that tension and challenge that made stealth feel like it actually mattered. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing really does depend on the player, but personally I think it's a fair trade. Now let's talk about the character models and the atmosphere, and this is actually something I feel quite strongly about. Looking at the side-by-side comparisons, the original Black Flag had this gritty, heavy, almost sweaty look to it. The characters felt weathered and lived in, like actual pirates who had been out at sea for months. The environments felt raw and grounded, and you could really feel the heat and the danger of the Caribbean in every scene. In Resynced, they've dialed that right back. Everything is cleaner, brighter, more vibrant, and yes, technically it looks more impressive. But the characters now look almost too polished, too pretty, like they've just stepped out of a salon rather than off a pirate ship. The faces in particular feel a bit uncanny. They don't have that same grit and expressiveness that the original had. And I'm not the only one saying this. This is a criticism that has come up in the community as well. And here's the thing, better graphics doesn't always mean better atmosphere. The original Black Flag had a tone and a mood that felt unique. That rawness was part of what made it so immersive. If you clean everything up too much you risk losing the soul of what made the original so special in the first place. Technically impressive, but does it feel like Black Flag? That's the real question. Overall, I feel like there was so much opportunity with this remake. So much that could have been added, expanded and built upon to make this a truly definitive pirate experience. Some of what they've done is genuinely great, but in other areas it feels like they played it too safe or even took steps backwards. And that's frustrating when you can clearly see the potential that was right there. But anyway, those are my thoughts on Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resynced. I'd love to know what you think. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know down in the comments below. And once again, thanks for watching.